just like to say a few words, really. I'll try and keep this relatively short. I'd just like to speak about last weekend's pro-Israel demonstration in London. I popped along just to try and see if I could catch up with some of the people who were attending it, because I think a lot of them are hypocrites. So I popped along anyway, and as did Tommy Robinson by all accounts. And that's one of the things I'd like to speak about, because in the build up to this event, CAA, Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, a hardline Zionist Jewish supremacist group, they got lots of publicity for their demonstration. They were invited on TV programs, podcasts, radio programs, things like that, to talk about it. And they was trying to push a point. They claimed that the Palestinians allow extremists on their demonstrations, and that there's people with pictures of paragliders and people chanting from the river to the sea, and lots of other things, and condemning them for it. And they're saying that they don't call anyone out. And CAA claim that when they have protests, that they do call people out. Although I haven't actually seen any evidence of this myself. I'm just going to play another quick clip. This is I think it's off Talk TV. I recorded this before. It's only just over a minute. I'm just going to play this. This is Stephen Silverman speaking. He's their legal guy from Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, and he talks a load of rubbish like the rest of them, but I'll put him on for a minute.
Weekly marches filled with those glorifying terrorism and inciting hatred are more or less given the keys to the city.
There are definitely people glorifying terrorism and inciting hatred. I have absolutely no dispute with you on that. But there are 300,000 people, we are told, the police estimate, who were on the march yesterday, the pro-Palestinian march. Not all of them hate Jewish people and hate Israel, do they?
Well, let's examine that. Campaign Against Anti-Semitism holds rallies and protests and demonstrations. Sometimes members of the far right turn up, and they turn up in the mistaken impression that because we call out Islamist anti-Semitism that we have a problem with Muslims. We don't. When their presence is made known to us, we have them removed, and we do it noisily, usually to chants of racist scum off our streets. I have not in 5 weeks seen any sign that the people marching alongside those who are carrying out these expressions of shocking anti-Semitic hatred are doing anything. They're tolerating it. And if you tolerate racism, you are complicit in it.
So that was Stephen Silverman from Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, and he claims that people have gone along supporting their demos because they hate Muslims, and they've been called out for it. And I don't think this is true. I'm aware that obviously they've started shouting at me a couple of times, but I've only been there filming. I've never turned up, and never would I turn up to support one of their events. I think these people are utter scum. I would never support them. And what I do is I turn up to film them and expose them. I filmed them outside Scotland Yard the other week. What's his name? Lord Ian Austin said a really, really terrible speech that should be condemned by any right-thinking person. A young, I assume he was Muslim, a young Asian fella drove by in a car. I think he was sort of stopped in traffic anyway. He didn't stop specifically for them, but he wound the window down and shouted out, "Israel are terrorists." And they all started shouting abuse at him, and the police landed up arresting him, when really they were the ones acting in a threatening manner. All he'd done is voice his opinion. And this is the kind of thing that goes on at their events, which is why I go along, and I will continue to go along to film their events and expose them, and not to support them. But like I'm saying, they've shouted at me in the past because they don't want me at their events exposing them. But I haven't been there supporting them, so it's obviously not me that they're talking about when they make these ridiculous claims. In fact, there's a YouTuber by the name of Busker in the Park. I'm sure a few people know who he is. He's got quite a big channel because he got lucky with. He's been taking the mickey out of the guards on Horse Guards Parade, and that he's been trying to catch videos of their hats falling off, or them making any sort of mistake, and tourists antagonising them and things like that. He's quite a well-known YouTuber, and he's a big supporter of Tommy Robinson, and he's also a big supporter of Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, and he regularly attends their events. He's always at the front filming. I don't actually know this, but I believe he may be one of their official volunteers. At a previous demo at the BBC, it was Busker that pointed out to them that I was there, and they thanked him for it. And basically, he attends their events. He doesn't so much make a nuisance of himself at their events, but he makes a nuisance of himself at other people's events. And at one of their events, he was slagging off one of the Muslim speakers that they had there. So I don't know whether you call him a far right extremist. I don't like using words like that, but he is what some people would consider a far right extremist, and he's made welcome at their events. And like I said, I'm not aware of anyone who's there to support their event getting turned away. Only myself and probably other people that are there to expose them, which they obviously don't want to be exposed for what they really are. So a couple of weeks before the demo, it was about 3 weeks ago now, Tommy Robinson promoted the demo on X, formerly known as Twitter, and they immediately responded saying that he wasn't welcome. He responded, I think it was to Lord Ian Austin. There was some sort of small spat on X, but it was made clear to him that he wasn't welcome at their event. But yet he turned up anyway, and which is it. It looks to me, I've never met Tommy Robinson. I've seen him about. I've never actually spoken to him. I've never really had any dealings with him, but it looks to me like he turned up there to be arrested. And what they've got out of it is Campaign Against Anti-Semitism have now turned someone away who's turned up to support them. So that sort of, it doesn't make their statement true, because it wasn't true when they said it, but it is since happened. Like I said, I believe staged. And Tommy Robinson can now get donations off people who believe that he's being persecuted. I don't know whether he was persecuted or not. He claims that he wasn't resisted arrest when he was sprayed with CS gas. If that's true, it's terrible. Again, I don't know if it's true. He's not the most honest of characters. So we don't know that either way. But obviously he turned up, got arrested. He's going to make a lot of money out of getting arrested. And Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, who he's got a mutual friend with, i.e. Busker in the Park, they get to say that they turn people away from their events. So from their point of view, it's everyone's a winner. After the protest, I think it was like a day or so afterwards, once Tommy had been released from jail, he put a short clip of my video that I put up on his Twitter feed, and complained that I was allowed on the march. And he showed a short clip from my video that showed me and Nick Lowles from Hope Not Hate arguing, and Nick involving a police officer in this argument. So basically what happened is, as I saw Nick Lowles on his way to the march, I approached him politely and asked him some polite questions, which he refused to answer. He was polite to start with until he got closer to the parade and the police were there, and not parade, protest. He got closer to the protest and the police were there. Then he started getting all aggressive, getting in my face, telling me to go away. It was laughable, really. And then he approached the police officer and basically tried to use his middle class privilege, the old I'm a whatever he is, and I don't like this person, please arrest them or move them on, or whatever he wanted them to do to me. A lot of these lefties, especially ones of like middle class sort of backgrounds, they seem to have this kind of idea that they can get people arrested just because they don't like them, rather than an actual crime being committed. And the police officer, to give him his dues, he was reasonable. He said it's a public place, he's allowed to film. There's nothing I can do about it. And Tommy Robinson's taken this to mean that I was allowed on the parade. But Nick Lowell's, although they're kind of linked, Hope Not Hate and Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. I'll get to that in a bit. But Nick Lowell's wasn't anything to do, well, as far as I'm aware, wasn't anything to do with organising that protest. So he had no authority over who is and isn't allowed there. Where it was Campaign Against Anti-Semitism that had Tommy removed, and Hope Not Hate couldn't have me removed because they didn't have any authority there. It wasn't their protest. I didn't want to go into the protest anyway. It would have been looking for trouble. I didn't want to do it. So I decided to go and hang around outside Dover House, which was a place that that Zionist terrorists planted back in the 40s, planted a massive bomb that could have killed possibly hundreds of people. Fortunately enough, it didn't go off, but that was actually on the march route. So I thought I'd go and stand outside there and film the protest going past. And I was hanging around. I actually hung around there for about an hour and a half before someone from Campaign Against Anti-Semitism came along, pointed me out to a police officer, and I was asked to leave the vicinity. And to be fair, a few of my friends were going out for a drink that day anyway. And so I decided, it was cold, miserable sort of weather. I wasn't probably going to get much of a film. The police officer said that undesirable, he didn't use the words undesirable, but basically said that undesirable people on the march might attack me and they can't guarantee my safety. I don't think that probably wouldn't have happened. I wasn't really concerned about my safety, but I thought, and the police are just trying to do their job. They've got to work on a Sunday, and I haven't got any. I've got things against the police when they do something wrong, but I haven't got anything against the police in general. So I decided it was easy just to go. So the police actually walked with me for about half a mile. We had quite a friendly chat. And then when we got to the other side of Parliament Square, by the statue of, just past the statue of Nelson Mandela, they said goodbye to me, and I continued to head to where I was meeting some friends for a drink. And that was it. So I wasn't allowed into the protest either. I didn't want to go in there, but I wouldn't have been allowed if I was. And the reason that Tommy Robinson was ejected was because he refused to leave. According to Richard Inman, they were given like 2 hours to eat their breakfast. I don't know who takes 2 hours to eat a breakfast. It might have even been the owners of the cafe that got them thrown out. I'm sure that someone, if they sit in a cafe eating their breakfast for 2 hours, would probably get thrown out after a while. I've never tried that myself, but if I would have thought someone's trying to run a business, that's what they'd do. But bring me back to the links between Hope Not Hate and Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. I don't think there's any official, well, not that I know of, there's not any official links between them, but they're both sort of Jewish-led charities. Obviously, Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. Gideon Falter, the chairman of that, he's on the board, I think, for the Jewish National Fund that raises money for building things in Israel, including in the occupied territories. So he's obviously an ardent Zionist. And then Hope Not Hate was originally part of Searchlight, which was set up by Jerry Gable. They've had lots of hardline pro-Israel, pro-Zionist Jews on their board and working for them. Ruth Smeeve is an obvious one, or Baroness. She's gone back to using her maiden name now, Baroness something. It's not Smeeve anymore, but she was on their board. She might be back there again. They've had Liron Velleman, who was he was actually working for Hope Not Hate, advising government on extremism. He was actually giving evidence. Well, I say evidence, it's basically opinion, really, but he's giving opinion to Parliament on the online harms bill and dealing with what they call extremists. I'd consider them to be extremists more than myself, or more than even Tommy Robinson, to be fair. And there's several other Jews that work for Hope Not Hate. It's very heavily. There's a lot of Jews employed by them. So So they're both very pro-Jewish, and sometimes I follow the pod. Well, I do. I follow the pod. I'm a bit sad, really, when it comes to that. Sometimes I watch their podcasts on both Hope Not Hate and Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, and there's sort of an overlap of people. Like there's an actor, he was in that the one about the one where those fighting supposed fascists back in the 50s or 40s or something, and something Road, Ridley Rhodes. Yeah, sorry. There was an actor. He was in Ridley Road. He played Solly the Wally in that. His name's I'm just going to get that up on my phone now. That's escaping me now. I can picture the guy because he was actually an actor. I think that's the only thing I've seen him in. But the only thing on television I've seen him in. But he was guest on Campaign Against Anti-Semitism's podcast, and on that he said something about a T-shirt that Hope Not Hate had printed, and the host said, "Oh, what a brilliant T-shirt that is! What good merch!" So they're obviously friendly with Hope Not Hate, and then this Eddie fella, he landed up doing a fake election address for Hope Not Hate. So people like that are like well embedded with both to do that. But and obviously Nick Lowles was made welcome on the parade because they're basically all the same. I keep saying parade on the protest because they're basically the same people, complete and utter scumbags, and they've got complete and utter contempt for us goyms, as they might call us. So that's about that about Tommy being arrested. I don't know. I think it's meant to be going to court in the and things like that. So, got anything else on there? I did try and make some notes. I was running a bit late promoting transgenderism and homosexuality. They have a refugees welcome protest, and they turn up. They got stuff about transgenderism and things like that. But then they turn up to the Palestinian protests, and that they must forget those leaflets and that, and they just stick to what that protest is about, because I think some of them have got in trouble where people have caught up with them there and they're not welcome. Because I don't think if most of these Palestinians knew what the Socialist Workers' Party and a lot of these Labour Party people are really about, then I don't think they'd have them on their protests. Met Police pepper sprayed him when his hands were behind his back, out of order. To be fair, it does look out of order. I think it probably might have been, it probably was overkill on the police's behalf. But pepper sprays, the idea of it is it's like a non-lethal restraint thing. It creates a nuisance and an irritant without actually doing any harm. Again, I don't know whether he was resisting arrest or not, but again, he's gonna make lots of money out of it. So there's no need to be worrying about him. I suppose someone could send him a few quid to buy some eye drops or something. I think he needs a phone charger at the moment. Someone was saying. There's another one, yeah. Steve Wild, hi Tony, loved your video confronting Nick Lowles. I love doing it, to be fair. It was great fun, because this is why people like that I've approached. Was the first time I've approached him. I've approached Owen Jones. I've approached several members of the Labour Party and people like that. And all they say is, "I don't want to talk to you." They can't, because they can't. They've got nothing to say. They're lying. They're prepared to go on TV and radio programs and tell lies about people. But when someone actually approaches them and asks them questions that they find awkward, then they don't want anything to do with it. I think I'm going to try and approach it. Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. That definition of anti-Semitism, that's actually anti-Semitic to do that. I think everyone, I wouldn't consider it anti-Semitic, but going by the official definition, that is actually anti-Semitic, going about George Soros. And also, apparently, Robinson's done another documentary in Ireland and that, and it's called Plantation Part 2 or Plantation Discussion, and agreed to do it. But I think they both sort of understand what they're doing. It suits Lowles to publicise Tommy Robinson, and it suits Tommy Robinson to publicise him. When they said they was going to release him, I'm sure he was allowed to phone somebody. So he's probably phoned Paul Golding, or he's phoned someone else who's phoned Paul Golding, one of the two. And you wonder whether Paul Golding literally just sat there for an hour filming the door, waiting for Tommy to come out, or whether Tommy poked his head out, then went back and once Paul had the camera ready, and then came out. But it just seemed, and also the filming himself in the back of a police van. I've never seen anyone do that before, because usually you're either searched and you've got your stuff taken off you when you're arrested, or you're handcuffed and then they search you when you get to the station. So they may have unhandcuffed him once they got to the. He does seem to like getting arrested. There must be a lot of money to be made when he gets arrested. The smallest minority on earth cause the most problems for all of us. I assume that's talking about the Jews, because a lot of them, and it's to be fair, it's a minority amongst the Jews as well. But you've got there's a lot of people. If you look at things like Parliament, the amount of MPs and Lords that are Jewish, considering they make up something like was it 0.2% of the population here and about 2% of the population in America, and the amount of them on boards of directors, CEOs, advisors, so many of them land up in positions of power that it's got to be more than a coincidence. You got that Barbara Lerner Spector and her, I forget what the name of that charity that she runs or used to run or whatever it was, that was basically about training Jews up for leadership positions. And whether it's all her doing or whether there's lots of other organisations doing similar things, a lot of them have landed up in positions of power. So many cameras on Tommy's arrest. Yeah, although to be fair, the amount of police were there, I think everyone would have grabbed their cameras. If I'd been there, I would have been filming it. Because it seems strange to do the actual arresting, and the rest are just there to make sure everything runs smoothly, or as smoothly as it can. The police are common purpose trained. Yep. Charity begins at home. Yeah, that must be when all the charities and all the money they waste. Yep, definitely.